So I'm speaking with one of the most influential writers, producers, directors, and composers in film, Mr. John Carpenter. John, thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure. How you doing?
Really good. So to start, I would love to know, I know you've talked about kind of your origins and stuff and what kind of got you into filmmaking and music, but what were the things that you fell in love with about the art of cinema and the art of composing? And what are the things that you really love about it that made you want to make a career out of it?
Well, I mean, I fell in love with cinema because of when I was really young. My family moved. We moved to a small southern town, which was in the grips of Jim Crow, and it was not a good place to grow up. It was an ugly place to grow up, and I was unhappy there. And I ran to the movies to escape. That was my place to kind of hide from the world. So, first of all, that was the reason for I started to go to the movies. But then I fell in love with it. It was just astonishing to me. It was a miracle. Movies were a miracle, and they were my first love. Cinema's my first love.
Yeah.
But the music was transformative, and it just went along with what the movie was. So it all goes together.
So you turned that into, I mean, you became kind of this maverick kind of filmmaker and really kind of wearing multiple hats throughout the films that you've made. And I mean, you've co-wrote and produced. I mean, your first film you co-wrote, produced, and scored and directed, Dark Star. And you continued to wear many different hats on your films throughout your career. I'm just curious, is it all neatly kind of organized in your brain when you're making a film? Or do you just flip a switch? I'm like, okay, I'm composing time. Okay, now it's directing time. Okay, now it's editing and producing. I mean, how do you make sense of it all?
Well, I attended USC Department of Cinema, the School of Cinematic Arts, I guess they call it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned everything about filmmaking from the bottom up, all the aspects of making a movie. In those days, it was on film, of course, but the editing, the sound, the mixing, everything, even the lab. I had a generalized idea of what was going on. And so when you're a student filmmaker, you don't have money to hire people to do things, so you have to do it yourself. You just don't have anything. So I started doing music for that reason, because I was half-assed good, and I had minimal chops, so I wasn't anything great, but I could at least fake my way through it. So I put music on my own stuff and my friends' stuff, and whoever needed it.
Yeah, and so I'm not a composer, but when I need to write or envision a character or a scene in my head, I always turn to music. That's kind of what ignites the ideas in my head. For you, where does inspiration come from? I guess what ignites that first idea that will eventually blossom into a story, or is there something typically that triggers you, or does it just happen, whether you're in the shower or doing dishes or in the car? Doesn't matter?
You're talking about storytelling, writing,
writing.
Oh well, that's a little bit different. I mean, I sit down and try to figure out something. An idea will come to me, a scene, a moment, a character, a situation. It just kind of breaks loose in my head somewhere. I suppose it's because of all the rattling around and that I've done creatively in my life since I was little. I was really fantasizing about movies and imagining them, and imitating the movies that I saw, and making up movies that in the future that I could make. And I had this imagination, I suppose, as well as my mother gave me the gift of fantasy, so I could fantasize about this stuff.
So when it comes down to going back to music, when does that start? What does that process start for you? Are you thinking about music in the writing phase, or are you just turning that off till you have a finished cut of the film that you can start writing to picture?
I don't think about music at all. I just I improvise when the movie's done, and it's just a pure function of I have to do this. That's where it began, I began as a student filmmaker, and I have to get this done. And then as I made more and more features, it's kind of, I kind of started to enjoy it. But then it got really hard to do. I mean, oh my God. It just became overwhelming. So after a while, I had to stop. I said, I can't do all this stuff now. I have to relax.
Well, one of your closest collaborators is, of course, composer Alan Howarth, who has co-composed many of your films with you. I mean, when did you first meet Alan, and how has that collaboration evolved over your career?
Well, Alan is an engineer, so he owns this equipment, and we were put together because of his equipment. And so I did the music, and Alan hit the buttons and provided the music sounds.
Did it become more of a symbiotic relationship as each movie progressed? Did you guys kind of built a really kind of a close, I guess, more shorthand as you guys worked?
Well, it was pretty much the same every movie. It was, I would just get a sound, and Alan had this wonderful synthesizer called the Oberheim. And, oh my God, I love the sound of that. And so, we'd start there. I'd start with something dark, or a high string or something like that. So it all depends.
Yeah, of course.
Alan was a pretty good engineer, but I moved on from him, and he has a career of his own now. So
absolutely, yeah. Typically, composers take their direction and guidance from their directors or producers, and since in these cases, you were the composer and the director. Did you ever rely on anyone else's opinions or guidance, just to get a second point of view or constructive criticism from anyone else when it came down to the music, or were you just confident in your choices?
I don't know if it was confidence, but I just dropped the music in and it seemed to work. So, it was on the stage, on the sound stage. We were mixing. Sometimes I would decide I don't want that particular piece. I don't need that, but I had the music ready to go. So I was pretty confident in my own choices.
Yeah. One of my favorite films of yours is The Thing, which I think is just, I'm sure everyone has told you it's such a brilliant piece of filmmaking from every aspect.
Thank you.
And it's my favorite horror film of all time. But I'm curious, it has such a unique, musical, background. Of course, you worked with Ennio Morricone. But I'm curious, how you worked with Ennio Morricone on that film. Stories I read online say that there was miscommunication, and then led you to kind of, you and Alan then again, replace some of his music. Was that the case?
No, that's terrible. No, that nothing like that happened. Nothing like that. That's terrible. I can't believe that. No, there's no miscommunication. Ennio did his brilliant score, and we didn't have the movie done for him. So what he did was he did several pieces of music that were used in various places. And he did just a brilliant opening theme. I loved it. What happened was needed some bridging music later in the movie, and then Ennio didn't have that. So I just ran and did some tones. I mean, there's nothing to. He didn't disappoint me. He didn't leave anything out. I just added a couple things.
Yeah, I mean the opening. I mean his stuff with your kind of bridging and stuff. It turned it into such a unique soundscape that it's The Thing. When you hear it, it's just amazing.
Well, thank you.
Did you ever see Tarantino's Hateful Eight? Because apparently some of that music in there was stuff that I guess wasn't used in The Thing.
I have no idea what people are talking about. Wasn't used. We used everything. Maybe Ennio did not send me, or didn't send me the music. Maybe he kept it for himself.
Oh, maybe.
Used it in the Hateful Eight, but it wasn't something that we used.
So let's fast forward a little bit to, of course, this year's new Halloween, directed by David Gordon Green. Did it take any convincing to come back to work on a Halloween film?
Well, yeah, but it was more psychological than anything else. Mm-hmm. Jason Blum worked on me, and he had a talk with me, and he said, you sitting on the sidelines there and shooting at the Halloween sequel. He said, why don't you do something unusual and help? It's just criticizing. And I thought, well, I could do that. I don't have to direct them, so I could help. So I did, and that's how I started.
And I mean, you got to work with your son Cody and Daniel Davies. I mean, talk about that collaboration and getting to, I guess, revisit one of the most iconic themes, in cinema history. I mean, how did you work with, your co-composers and bring Halloween back in 2018?
Well, Daniel and Cody and I have done 3 albums together, so this is the 4th, and we work really well together. And we just waited until the movie was shot and cut together, and we had a spotting session with the director. And usually that's what happens. You have spotting sessions and ask him what he wanted here and there, what kind of a tonal quality, and then we went from there. And it was easy and fun.
I mean, has Halloween? You've probably heard about it your entire life. I mean, it's such an iconic film. Are you still in love with it, or you get tired of it?
Oh, the movie Halloween? No,
Yeah.
I love it. But this new movie's terrific. It's just terrific, and it's very scary, and I'm real proud of it.
Did David ever give you notes? I'd be so terrified if the composer of my film was also the writer and director of the original. I mean, how was it working with David?
Easy and wonderful. Yes, he gave me notes. He said, don't do that. Make it darker. And yeah, okay, great. I was there to help and please him. I wasn't there to be a director. It's his movie. It's his movie with my music on it, and I'm real proud of it. So it went well. It went very smoothly.
So, kind of looking back at your career, you made so many films, and I mean, horror and sci-fi, but they had elements of sometimes comedy and romance and everything. But in focusing, I guess, on the horror genre, and just in terms of storytelling and filmmaking, what makes a good horror film in your opinion? What makes a successful, entertaining horror film?
It's all about story, and there are no rules to horror. It's all about story, and if you have a great story that's compelling, then you cast it correctly. You have characters that the audience wants to identify with, and you do all the other things right, you'll have a good movie. But there are no, magical rules for horror. Horror is a lot like comedy. It's about timing. But I say story, story, story. That's what makes a horror film.
And do you think that's why Halloween has endured, I mean, all these years, that people are getting so excited for this new one, almost like all the other sequels never, it is, they're treating all the other sequels as they never happened, but I mean, how has it endured so long? And why do you think audiences still, I guess, gravitate towards it?
I have no idea. No idea. None. I thought there was no story left after the first one. But how wrong was I? God.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Michael Myers, he's had a very fulfilling career as well.
There you go.
The character of Michael Myers, how did that that kind of giving kind of this idea to the slasher film, like just faceless and he doesn't speak. I mean, what was the idea behind that, and how did that kind of come to be?
Well, it was written. This is a low-budget movie, mind you, and so we didn't have any money for anything really. So the character of Michael Myers was a character who was just in between being a human being and then being supernatural. And so you wanted to strip down his character, so he never spoke. And we didn't quite understand what he was doing, what his motivation was. In the original movie, Donald Pleasance runs around calling him pure evil and all these things. And he keeps appearing and disappearing in the movie. So it was a chance to, scare the audience. That was what it was all about.
Yeah.
And so he's neither man nor supernatural being. He's maybe both. He's a force of nature.
And his I mean the mask has become iconic, of course, and I guess the story is that it was a Captain Kirk mask. Is that the
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Yep.
Recently, you've gotten to revisit a lot of your old scores via the albums that you've put out, and of course, you're going on tour and performing live. Again, you're going to be here in LA on October 31st for Halloween.
That's right.
Yeah, many of today's composers, such as Hans Zimmer, who I know loves your scores, like especially Assault on Precinct 13, and so many other people look up to you. Has it, and you going back on your career, has it been enjoyable to kind of go back and look at everything that you've ever written, or has it been a little bit like, oh God, what did I do here? Oh, what was I thinking?
Well, I don't watch my old films. I can't because I'm too critical of them. I'll start to watch an old movie and I'll think, what was I doing? Why is that so slow? Man. So I can't, it's too upsetting. They're done.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do about it. And God bless them. They live wherever they live, and I don't have to worry about them.
Do you get a thrill from performing on stage in front of a live audience?
Yeah, it is fun, yeah. It's a lot of fun. We have a good time.
Kind of looking at the current state of the film industry, you've taken a break from directing for a while, and it seems like, I don't know, it seems like studios are running the multiplexes with the big tentpole films, but it seems like a lot of auteur filmmakers are flocking to TV. I think the Coen brothers have a new thing on Netflix, and a lot of these great directors. I mean, do you see yourself ever coming back and maybe doing something for HBO or Netflix or Amazon, something like that?
Sure. I'll direct again. I direct a feature again. It all depends. It all depends on a lot of aspects, but sure, if I like something, I'd do it. It would take a bit of convincing to get me up off the couch and get out there. I'm an old man now. The movie business has changed a great deal since I first got in it and since I was working.
Yeah.
Just the whole process of making a movie has changed, and it's just a different ballgame. And it's not, when I'm in my day, there was always one person that was the head of the studio who you had to deal with and who you discussed the cut with. But nowadays, it's a giant committee. I mean, it's really bizarre. It's a different world. And then there's digital, working with digital. It's not bad. It's pretty easy to do. But it's different, and, I don't like working hard. I've worked hard all my life.
Yeah.
I like to take it easy.
I mean, do you think all this kind of business-like approach to filmmaking, has it kind of watered down the craft? Do you think that there's not as many good movies being made these days?
No, they're making good movies, but they're making bad ones. It's about the same.
Yeah.
It's all about the same. Movies go through all sorts of changes and from silent films to sound, on and on and on. And the truth is, most of them are bad. A few of them are fair. A fewer are good, and then every once in a while there's a great one. It's all the same. It's all the same.
I do think horror, though, has really had this resurgence lately, and I think you can credit Jason Blum as well to kind of this kind of micro-budget horror films that are still letting directors, I think, direct. And I think you don't see that too often. And I think that's a cool thing, especially for horror.
That's exactly what he's doing, and I think it's great. I applaud Jason. He's doing a good job. As much as he irritates me, I applaud him.
Well, as long as his irritation got you back to score Halloween, I think that's all worth it.
Yeah, well, okay.
Also, and focusing a little bit on your work with science fiction and kind of stuff like Escape from New York and Escape from LA. Escape from New York has become such a cult hit, and these new releases are coming out, remastered, and I think they're doing 4K releases in the UK. That must have been such an amazing film to just build the world. I mean, there's not just the story, but just the production design and everything. I mean, was that had to have been such a great joy?
Well, I don't know who you've been talking to about movies, but directing a movie like Escape from New York is not a great joy. It's a huge pain in the ass. It's really hard. It's not. I don't run around joyful and thinking, "Oh my God." No. It was hard work, and we pulled it together. Let me put it that way. Thank God we made it.
So you definitely probably look back at everything once it's finished and kind of relish in the final product. Do you find the actual production process just exhausting?
It's like working in a coal mine.
Yeah.
It's hard, yeah. But when it's done, that's why I say I love it when it's done. I'm not responsible anymore. I can relax. Don't have to think about it.
Well, just to kind of wrap things up a little bit, what are some films that you kind of hold close to your heart that you didn't make, but stuff that you would consider your kind of favorite films of all time?
Well, you have to go back in the old days when I was young. Those are when my favorite films came out. I'm a big fan of Howard Hawks, so there's several of his old movies that I love dearly. And there's some new films that I am attached to also that I think are great. There's a few movies every year that I think are just really terrific. But I don't know. I love Rio Bravo. I love Only Angels Have Wings. I love Forbidden Planet. Things like that are my favorite movies.
Yeah, I would love to see you make like a Western. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to clean up the horse shit, so...
Well, John, I just want to thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And
absolutely, man. It's been a blast. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you again. And look forward to seeing Halloween, and I just want to thank you for all the movies you've made. It's all the hard work you put in has been worth it. So I just want to thank you.
Okay, man. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll talk later.